back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, I am here today to talk to you about two books I recently read. The first of them is this one, Traitors Moon by Lynn Flewelling, and the second one is this one, which is The Tiger's Daughter by Kay Arsenault Rivera. Both of them are books that contain LGBTQIA+ romances, and I really loved both of them. They were so well done. So I want to talk to you about them today. So I'm going to review this one first, Traitors Moon. Traitors Moon is a continuation of a story that we already started in the first two books in this series. It's the Night Runner series, so this is book 3. However, it does feel like this one's a little bit of a more standalone story. Of course, it harks back to events from previous books, but for me, I feel like this stands fairly on its own. It's a strong book on its own, despite the fact that there are two books prior to this. So in this story, we are following two characters. One of them is Tiafae and the other is Orenfae, so they're kind of like elves essentially, but one is a half-breed and the other is full elf. And we follow them and they are called Serigel and Alec. Serigel is the Orenfae, Alec is the Tiafae, and we follow them as they are blossoming into their relationship. In the first two books we saw them meet one another and kind of start working together and develop the beginnings of a relationship, but by this book we are seeing them in a really passionate, loving, caring relationship, and they are just so sweet. I love them. I wouldn't say I'm one who goes for romance much in books. In fact, I can find it pretty tedious if I'm honest. But this story and this series does it so well, and Lynn Flewelling really handles their relationship very carefully and moulds it into a really beautiful thing, and I love that. So these two characters have been living apart from society since the ending of last book, where very dramatic things happened and they were kind of traumatised and they decided to take time away and recover. So they've been living a life of fairly simple, up in the woods, and just kind of living with each other and enjoying one another's company. However, they do have plenty of friends who are concerned about them, and we also have the Queen of Scala, who is the queen of the land where they live right now. She is fighting a war. She wants to negotiate with Orenin, which is where the other Orenfae live, and so she's decided she's going to send her daughter to Orenin to discuss with all of these people how best to trade and how to win the war. And she decides that to send along with her daughter Serigel and Alec. So they are summoned and they agree to go, and that's where this story really starts going. So we follow all of the crew. We have Serigel, Alec, but we also have Becca and Clea. Clea is the princess, Becca is a friend of theirs who they know from previous books, and plenty of others like Theru, who is a wizard that they've known and worked with in the past. So it's a good old kind of coming back together reunion of some of the characters from previous books. I love seeing the band kind of come back together, and I also love the fact that all of them have great relationships and camaraderie with one another, not just the two main characters. They all feel very authentic and fleshed out, and I think you get a real sense of friendship and kinship throughout the book. However, one thing to note about Serigel is that he is an exile from Orenin and the other Orenfae, so going back to Orenin is quite a big deal, and when they get there, of course, things do not go smoothly. This book could just easily be described as elf politics or Orenfae politics, because it is largely negotiation, it's largely focused on their travel there and their travel back, but also on a mystery, because once they get there, people start being injured and hurt, and one even ends up dead. And so we follow them as they try and investigate what exactly has been going on. The two of them are part of a secret group called the Watchers, and they've been part of this for a while now, and we follow them as they go out on their night running adventures and try and find out exactly what is going on and who's behind it all. So alongside that, it's their relationship, as I said, and I think this book is just excellent. I personally thoroughly recommend the whole of this series so far. I think there are about 6 in the series, and this is the 3rd, and I loved it. So I gave this a really solid 4 out of 5 stars, and I would thoroughly recommend it, especially if you are looking for a good example of an LGBTQ relationship. This has got that. Now moving on to this book, which is The Tiger's Daughter. This one is one that I was really anticipating when it came out last year, and I don't know why it's taken me this long to get around to it. But I'm so glad I finally have, because I loved this book. This one is one that takes influence from Asian culture, and I really enjoy the idea of taking influence from the Mongol Empire. It definitely harks back to kind of nomadic people travelling around, and it also harks back to the time of empires, and I think that's really, really interesting to see. We follow two young women. They are best of friends when they're children, and then as they grow up they kind of separate out a little bit more because their lives take them in different directions. We don't know too much about them until we start to follow the story, and we find out that one of them is the empress to the Hokaran people and the other one is the heir to the Quarren people. And as we follow their story we find out a little bit more about how these two types of people kind of almost coexist. They don't necessarily work together, although they have in the past, but they are the two heirs to these people. So we follow the two of them, Shefali and Shizuka. Shefali is the Quarren warrior and Shizuka is the young empress, and we follow them as they develop a kinship and a friendship because their parents, their two mothers, are the best of friends. So their mothers are very respected in their various circles. One of them is the executioner for the emperor, and one of them is currently the leader of all of the nomadic types of people. She's united them all and she has a vow of silence. So their mothers were the best of friends. But when the children are growing up and when they first meet one another, they actually take an instant disliking and have a catfight until they are forced by their mothers to become friends and write letters and become pen pals. So that is where their story really begins, and we follow them as they are in the present day writing letters about their childhood and their past. So this is told in two different viewpoints. We have the Empress's current day situation, which we see snippets of here and there, and then we mostly focus on letters, which are from Shefali to Shizuka, and they are about the life that they led together and the way that they grew up and became such firm friends that they would never leave one another. Of course, later in the story we focus on the relationship that they've grown, and it turns from a friendship into a romance, and it becomes something that is very integral to the two of them and to the way that they live their lives. Both of them have a kind of magical power that, as the story goes on, they discover more about. When they're children, they don't really understand it, but as they grow up and see things and more of the world, they start to understand that they are a bit different from everyone else. They have something more and something greater, and their relationship is also blossoming and growing. So the two of them are growing closer and becoming closer than ever. We also do have later on magical beings and a kind of rot infection that is infecting people in this land, and it's kind of almost like creepy darkness that just seeps in and turns their blood black and makes them desire the taste of flesh. It's not something to be desired, let's be honest, but it's something that is seeping across the land, and so we see them as they try and take on some of these creatures and what happens when they do, and how that really puts strain on their relationship and tests them to the extent of their limits. I personally fell in love with the writing style. I don't always enjoy second person, and the letters are told in second person because they are addressed, of course, to Shizuka, the Empress, from Shefali. But I think that second person thing really, really works in this format because a letter would be addressed that way, and it makes sense that they are sharing memories, and I really, really like that element, and I think actually it worked really well having the multiple storylines and the letters being the main part, but then the Empress's present day story kind of showing you a little bit about how things have changed. I will say that currently this is a story that I just am so infatuated with and so interested in where it's going to go. This ends on a really dramatic end note, and I feel like there's a lot more to come from these two as well. So I really, really can't wait for the next book, which I know comes out this year. And I'm so excited about it, so I've pre-ordered it already because I'm that excited. But yeah, I absolutely love these two characters. Their personalities and the way that they shone as women was incredible, and they were so, so well written. I loved the way that they kind of understood one another and they sympathised and they learned from their mistakes, and they were really fearsome when they had to be, but they were also vulnerable and open and raw and honest when they needed to be too, and it just all flowed beautifully together to see these two really powerful, strong women working together, growing a relationship, loving one another, but also doing some badass fighting and taking on the world and developing their magic. They were really, really cool and some of the coolest characters I've read in fantasy for a while, so I gave this a 5 stars. Of course, I loved it. I thought it was excellent and I cannot recommend it more highly to you guys, so please do pick it up because I loved it. And also this series, the Night Runner series, I love that too. Those are my reviews of these 2 books. Do leave me your comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Recommend me any other fantasy series that have LGBTQ+ themes if you can think of any, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.